If you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, Sadie, can I have roll call, please?
Counselor Dunsmuir,
Here.
Counselor Gates,
Here.
Counselor Hughes,
Here.
Counselor Lidkey,
Here.
Counselor Strobel,
Here.
Counselor Tenbush,
Here.
Mayor Drinkline.
Here, thank you. Okay, we were at the first citizen and community group comment. Do I have anybody in holding?
Nope.
No? Okay. We will move along to council business. First on council business, we have ordinance 2020-003, an ordinance establishing the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of the City of Estacada and adding chapter 2.33 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee to the Estacada Municipal Code and the discussion. So who wants to start off the discussion?
So I think Taylor will start off with showing you. Taylor, do you want Sadie to put that up on the screen?
She's muted.
Hold on, she's been having computer issues, so hopefully it. Taylor? Let me be sure she's not having an issue. Taylor, are you there? Taylor, do you want to just call in with your phone?
I knew it. The computers are taking over. They've got Taylor.
What's that?
Okay.
Yeah, we can't hear. You're breaking up. So do you just want to call with your phone?
Okay, yeah, or let me try on my personal laptop.
Okay.
So let me just go into the.
She sounds really good across your phone, Denise.
Yeah, I know.
Hold the phone up there. You're good to go.
But anyway, it would be helpful if Sadie could put.
Yeah, she'll put that up there.
Thing on the screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Wait, let me get my phone off. And do you need my phone on?
No, I'll.
Okay. Okay, can we hear you now?
Okay, yeah, can you?
Okay, you're good.
Okay. Whew. I don't know what's going on with my Zoom. Okay, yeah, so we got some good feedback from the council on some changes or potential changes that could be made to the ordinance. So included in green and underlined would be things that would be added, and then in red and crossed out, obviously, would be removed. So I don't know did we just want to go through and discuss the changes, or?
Yeah, so let's so in the membership, the only real criteria that you had to be was a resident of the Estacada School District for at least a year. So we moved that up into the membership line and then just said and demonstrate at least one of the following and left the rest underneath.
Right, yeah. So the clarification there that I think was needed was a lot of those criteria were not, it wasn't a list of requirements, but rather a list of the range of characteristics that were intended to be on the committee. So it would, ideally among the various, 7 committee members, those 5 different characteristics would be present. So that rewording is kind of to indicate, okay, the only firm requirement is that you be a resident of the school district for at least a year, and then the rest of these things you would want to have at least one of those characteristics if you're applying.
So does that section look good to everybody?
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Okay.
I have a question about it.
Mhm.
I'm not opposed to the restructuring of how this is being worded and portrayed, but my main concern is, are the marginalized communities that are specifically being called out right now as it exists in text and are being removed, are they still going to be referenced in our ordinance at a later time or even earlier in the ordinance, or is removing these groups of people that we're specifically acknowledging, is removing them from this section going to remove them from the entire ordinance? I guess is my one and only question.
Yeah, I don't think they are mentioned again in this ordinance. No.
So if that is the case, then if we are going to remove these marginalized communities that we are wanting to acknowledge as having been historically marginalized, I think that we would need to then put this section somewhere else in the ordinance just so that they don't get lost, if that makes any sense. And I don't know if anyone agrees with me on that, but I would really hate to see things like BIPOC or LGBTQ plus, or, you know, even people with disabilities or with low English proficiency. I'd hate to not have them acknowledged in this ordinance.
So I read probably somewhere in the high teens, the DEIC committees around the country, what they've done, and basically the writing in this one, they don't list who, they don't list it out like that, like we had it. A good one, for example, is Lake Oswego. You know, they're a little further ahead in this than we are, and there's historically marginalized communities, historically marginalized and underrepresented groups is basically the wording that they use. So I mean, that's why I like this one. I mean, like I said, I read a lot of them. I went through, I know it's so many, but none of them list out the communities or groups that are that they're, it's just so, like what Joel was saying in his I don't want to say complaints, but his issues with the original. Not all of these are always going to be marginalized or underrepresented. If we do this right, everybody, all of these groups will be represented fairly, will be represented equally. But if another group falls under that, falls into that underrepresented or marginalized, then we would have to change the whole ordinance to include them. So this way, if we don't list it, if there's somebody that falls into that underrepresented group, then we don't have to go through the process of changing the ordinance just so the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee can reach out to them. So that was my thinking behind it. So thank you.
I just want to say thank you, Jerry. Actually, you put that really well. And I mean, I do agree with it. I just want to make sure that we're still somehow acknowledging these people. Maybe it's not in this ordinance, but maybe we do it in some other way in the city. I'd really like to still acknowledge these groups within our community in some form or fashion. And so if we don't list them specifically in this ordinance, I'm okay with that, as long as we do something else in the future. So
And I'm sure when we get, as results of this committee, we'll be getting policies and things that will mention these people from that committee.
Good.
Okay, so Sadie, if you'll scroll down, I think is everyone good with that?
I just
Yeah.
have a question about it.
Okay.
So everything, by the way, looks really good. Massive improvement from what I'd asked for. But the question here is, if the connection with local historically marginalized communities, should we also want to identify any current communities that are currently being, marginalized or underlooked right now too as well? So while this says historically, shouldn't we also put it as an option there for someone that's, so if there's like a new group that's coming under like underrepresented in the community, shouldn't we be able to allow them to have a connection with it as well? And so, well, and my only question would be like, is there a better wording for that? So just
Well,
basically,
it says down further,
Mhm.
down further in the, Sadie, if you'll scroll down,
maybe I missed
assist
it.
the city on outreach and engagement with historically underrepresented groups. When I sent it through, how did I word it? I think I put historically marginalized and underrepresented groups, when I wrote it, or when I sent it through earlier.
I think that would be a good alternate and a good compromise for just to identify historically marginalized and underrepresented groups. Or we can just remove the historically off there and just go by marginalized groups, because that could be historical or current. So
I kind of like the historical in there personally, but
yeah, I get that. But I'm just trying to basically, like I said, something that really does include it all. But if we put an extra statement in there with historically marginalized and underrepresented groups, then at least we have a full inclusion statement then. So
Okay. So did you get that, Taylor?
Yep, so would we want to, in both sections there, so item
Yes.
C in the bottom and then,
Yep,
uh,
yep. Yeah,
so
the same wording,
both of those would be changed to say historically marginalized and underrepresented groups.
right.
Okay,
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, so if we go down under responsibilities, we did some work there, and does anyone have any questions about that?
and just reread it and make sure I'm missing anything here. Yeah, I do have a question. What does input mean? That's one of the questions I had, is what does input mean?
Yep, Taylor, go ahead.
Sure, yeah. So I think that you're right that it's not something that's listed in addition to advice in other of Estacadas committees. I think that language probably came from whenever this was being drafted, the team that was sort of brainstorming and populating it, pulled from other committees like maybe Lake Oswego, Milwaukee. I know Metro's core something committee we pulled from. So I'm not sure exactly where that came from, but my understanding of it would be, in addition to advice coming in the form of recommendations for the council, input would include also information, perspective, and preference from whatever group or perspectives you're hearing from. So
So
there's
advice.
a little more, a broader
Can we
range
just
of things that might.
remove, I mean, to be straightforward and for everybody's time here, can we just remove input and just provide advice? Because everything you described is advice. So I just think input has too much of a flexible word for someone to use if they want to try to push on something. And being it's an advice committee, and I did some research as well, and they use these over on the East Coast a little bit, and some of them try to go a little too far with it. That's also why I'm being a little bit cautious on it. I want to make sure it's an advice committee, it stays an advice committee. And since we don't use input on any of our other advice committees, can we keep it as advice? And just remove
But you
input?
do receive input from your other committees. It's like the Parks and Rec Committee. They gave input on, placing parks and where the park should go, and, what were the responsibilities, or what were the criteria for your neighborhood parks. They provided all the input for that.
They're
And-
advising still. And I've
Well,
looked,
this one is advising too, Joel. This is an
I know,
advisory committee.
I've looked at our ordinances. It says it doesn't say input anymore. I'd like to really can talk about having that removed because, like I said, it's something I've seen this committee kind of can get because people get really passionate in this committee. It touches on a lot of personal issues in here and things, and it really gets people going. So by having a committee that has very specific parameters on it, it helps to control for people pushing a little too far. It gives them really good guidelines where they should go with it. So I'm thinking if we keep it, if it's advice that they're providing, because they're advising us on what we should do to try to make sure that we're equal and fair with everything we do. But so that's what I said, it says keep it advice. I mean, that's everything you described, Taylor, was advice. And so I'm just trying to make sure that we follow what our other ordinances are, which you can't see, I'm holding up paperwork. But why don't we follow the same guidelines? I mean, why is that a big deal?
How does everybody else feel about that? Is that something that Joel is hitting on, or is that something that everybody is content with the way it is? Now, I'd like to hear from somebody else.
That
I think,
okay, go ahead, Paul.
I think it's a fine line. It's input and advice. I think what Joel had said previously is that it can be redundant. And I could agree with that. I think from my standpoint, I'd be fine just removing the word input as well and just keeping it consistent with the wording with the other committees that we have out there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you,
I
Paul.
agree.
I don't have a problem with removing input.
Charity and
Yeah.
Jerry, what did you say, Jerry? I didn't catch that.
That I don't have a problem with removing the word input.
Oh, okay, all right. So I think from what I can see, we're all pretty much on the same page. Katie, do you have any input on that? Is she around?
Nope, no input.
Okay, great. All right, so let's look at maybe pulling that word.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the next section.
I don't think there is another section.
That's just it? That's all we got?
That's it.
All right, all right.
I had one more question.
Okay, Joel.
Can someone describe me what oversight and opportunities mean?
Taylor, you want to hit that one?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's another piece that came from looking at other committees related to DEI in the region. Oversight, in my mind, I mean, we didn't go through all of the definitions of every word that's in there. So I'm just speaking from when I read this, what I understand it to be. Oversight being essentially that members of the community are paying attention to and have access to information about public processes. And so one thing that this committee and all committees essentially do is they focus on certain processes that are going on at the city, certain decision making that's going on at the city, and they are provided information. Ideally, those are transparent processes, and they are able to communicate with the council or whatever decision making body is working on something to give input.
Okay, thank you, Taylor.
Advice.
Does that answer your question, Joel?
Yeah, it gives me a little bit better idea. So I think I'll just kind of leave that alone. I think I can see where that can make sense. I did have one question on this one though. Looking at my previous notes, is it possible to just have that word racial completely removed out of that sentence? Because the whole goal is not to just focus on one thing as it was fixed up above. Can we remove the word racial out of there and just have it focused on, like maybe it is still saying there, right? Did I miss it? Yeah, I got to say in there. Okay. To the community on equity, inclusion, and diversity initiatives.
Okay.
Because that would be inclusive of everything like we did up above. So in this case, it just focuses solely on racial at that point.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that, or is that anybody like to chime in on that?
I'm good with that. It stays consistent with the rest of the language up above as well. And with it not by omitting that word, it does provide more inclusivity.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm good
I
with
can't
that.
see any hands because we've got this up. So
right.
if anybody wants to talk, just go right ahead. I can't keep an eye on you. Anybody else?
I'm good with consistency.
Okay.
I'm
All
good
right.
with that too.
Joel, is that enough?
Yeah,
Do you have anything
I
else?
think I'm not really seeing anything else. Let me look my notes. All right, and one last thing, could you answer me, Taylor? What is with an review current policies and procedures with an equity lens? Wasn't that kind of the same as E, or are we going to be like, what's the outcome of the review current policies and procedures with an equity lens? Is there going to be like a feedback, advice, something given out of that? It just kind of states it, but doesn't really give any what the purpose behind that is or what the outcome is of it. I was kind of curious if you could fill me in there. The very last one on there.
Sure, yeah. Well, the purpose is kind of vaguely wrapped into the purpose of the whole committee, I would say. But the equity lens would be something that would be developed by, or I mean, there are tons of equity lenses out there that can be used as examples, or that the city could use to develop their own, that would, I assume, be included in the development of that strategic plan that's under item D. And I didn't hear you clearly if you were asking the difference between this one with item between.
The way I'm reading it, I'm wondering if E and F are kind of redundant on the statement, and if they're not, that's fine. I just kind of, if F is a standalone one,
Oh, I see.
like
Yeah.
if you look at each one, it kind of defines what that particular, like, evaluate the city's progress on equity goals, efficacy, and action plans. It's the evaluation is the feedback there. So the review, is that going to provide us like a like some sort of well, basically, what's it going to provide back to us? Are we just going to get a piece of advice on that? Is if they, because they're looking at the current policies, are they going to say we should fix this and this, or what's the actual outcome of that? I just want to kind of.
So to me, it reads, E is basically saying that they're going to evaluate everything that we do moving forward, and F, to me, says they're going to review everything that is set in place right now.
Okay.
Right. It
So-
would be more like an audit. You could think of it more like an audit.
Okay. So let's say we do this audit and we see that one of our groups, let's say one of our ordinances might be skewed somehow. What happens at that point? Can you
Well,
give me?
then ideally they would come forward with some recommended actions. Hopefully, I would imagine that those would be two separate processes. The audit type review would be a set of information for the council to just know about, and then the actual recommendations would be obviously related to and informed by that audit, but then those are separate in my mind.
So
separate in the listed out responsibilities here.
let me just kind of understand just what I'm seeing here. So they are going through one of our ordinances. They see it that it's maybe doesn't really include or doesn't really focus well on disabled people or something like that. So they're going to say, hey, we noticed that this policy or whatever is a little bit skewed. Here's a recommended change in wording to try to help increase that. What do you guys think? And that's kind of what we're looking for, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the council takes it from there and says, and decides what to actually do, maybe based on those recommendations. But depending on what the council can agree upon, it's not like the recommendations of this committee are automatically required to be adopted.
Yeah, I got that. Can we write that somewhere in there
It's
about what they provide? Because I didn't see that.
Yep, it's written in as that it's an advisory body. So advisory
Okay,
body.
so we're going to basic general definition of what an advisory body is. Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Any more questions on that?
All the questions I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions to this whole ordinance?
I don't have any questions, but if you the worst one that I read was the MIT chemistry department, And man, it was so convoluted and just they defined everything to the T. And oh man, it was a really rough one, but I made it through it.
All right, all right.
We'll go ahead and make these changes and we'll bring it to you at the next meeting for your first reading. And
Okay,
then it'll be the second meeting of the month for your second reading, and we'll do the appointments at that meeting.
all right, sounds good. We thank you for bringing that. Staff did a great job. Thank you, Taylor.
Sadie,
the
can you put that
explanations.
map up? Thank you.
Thank you,
Do we-
Taylor. I know I'm kind of hard to work with on this, but I really want to make sure we got it right. So
Do we still only have the 12 applications or have we gotten more?
I'm not
I
sure.
think there are 13. Oh, you know what? One of them was not eligible. Yeah, 12.
12. Okay. All right. So
Sorry, I'm
thank you,
just trying to-
Taylor. We appreciate you. All right, so I'm going to go to the next thing on here is the marijuana dispensary discussion. So we've got the map up.
Can you hit that full, there you go. Okay, so this is very, it's just, it's not accurate, but it's close. And so, this is what it would look like if we did the state ordinance, the state rules say 1,000 feet from all schools, public, private, parochial, preschools. And then we don't have a separate marijuana retail, medical marijuana and recreational. We have lumped it all together. So because of that, the medical marijuana says, and 1,000 feet from any other marijuana store, which we don't have yet, so we don't need to worry about that. So those would be the two that you have to have in your ordinance. And when I was looking at a lot of the other towns that have this, of course, some don't allow it at all. I think Sandy doesn't allow it, and there's a couple others. But when I looked at some that did, they would, for places of worship and parks, they said it couldn't be adjacent to those. So I did this map where the orange circles are the 1,000 feet from the schools. And then I did a orange line around the Timber Park, for example, and our small park. And then I didn't do one at City Hall because there's really no property adjacent to us that would work anyway. So, and the rest of the parks are in residential zones. So you don't allow it, it's not allowed in your residential zone. So we have R1, R2. Sadie, can you move it up a little bit so we can see the, now make the map smaller maybe. There we go. So we have R1 and R2 and R3 and our north residential zones that it couldn't be in. So that all of that light yellow area is R1. The kind of orangey area up by the circle at the top is North City Residential. And then the yellow is R2. And this orange down on Lakeshore is R3. So those areas you couldn't have one. But other than that, if you look at this, it would open up. It's already allowed in the highway commercial, which is this red area in the middle here.
Mhm.
And then the only C1 that we have left is on the end of 6th Street, right by and those would be the lots that include the Teen Challenge place and the house right beside it. And then other possibilities could include your green, that is your, now the dark green down here.
Yeah, so Denise, really quick, that is riverfront commercial, and
Yep.
in our municipal code, it actually says that in the outdoor commercial zone, that retail marijuana is a prohibited use. Would it be possible to change that?
Well, that's it. You're gonna have to change, if you want to add a zone, other than the highway commercial and the C1, that would also be a change that we would have to change at the same time.
Okay.
And then also the mill area mixed use, the purple would open that up. And then, of course, if you wanted to do any downtown, it would open some of the downtown area up. So there's the map, and we're gonna listen to your guys' discussion and see where you.
All right. So Katie, I'm gonna let you take off with this first, and then we'll kind of follow suit.
All right, well, I mean, we've all been contacted by the same people who have a vision of bringing this business into our city. Now, this crop has been legal for recreational purposes since 2014, 2016, 2000, I think it was 2014. And we've seen other cities actually benefit from the taxes that were collected from the businesses that open up within their cities. And right now we have an ordinance in our own municipal code that is so very restrictive that it makes it virtually impossible for anybody to operate this legal business. And there are some challenges with developing from land that is currently empty or vacant. If there's no building on it, it's harder to develop land like that than it is for a business to come into an existing retail store and make it into a retail shop. That being said, we've practically taken away all of the opportunities for that. So I just want to hear what other people's ideas are. I mean, really, I don't see a reason why we should be any more restrictive than the state is, personally. That's where I'm coming from. And honestly, I want to hear what everybody else thinks.
All right. Well, you've heard Katie's statement. Who wants to be first on this? Let's get the conversation out there. So we're all speaking.
I don't know if we can see hands or not.
Okay, Joel, right, there you go.
So I had some thoughts about this. And one of the questions I'll start with for Denise, and maybe the current people that have been on the council for a little while, why was the ordinance originally put in place?
They just wanted to be sure that it wasn't around areas where children congregated.
Okay, does that desire changed at all?
I don't know.
Okay.
Ask the council.
Yeah, I mean, it's an open question. I'll let everybody answer when they get to it in a second, but I have an idea. We're here to represent the community, right? This is obviously the hot button topic for a lot of people. I think what we should do is put out take about 30 days, put out all the water bills, a survey to all the people in the city, ask them what they think, if they want this moved into their city as a business or not. And then maybe have a town hall or something to ask what the people in the area that would be affected by what they think. If they think it's a good idea, let's move forward with it. If they don't, then let's respect what the people in the area want. So, I mean, I think it's the best way of something like this is to involve the community. So they're delivering it too. And I wouldn't feel comfortable making a decision on that without knowing that information. So that's just my take on it.
Can we pull the map down for a minute so I can see who's raising their hand? Thanks. Okay, who else would like to speak on this? Jerry, go ahead.
So my opinion is I have no problem with people, doing this legal thing. I just don't want to see it. I just don't want it rammed down my face. I don't want to see it when I'm driving through our downtown. I have no problem with it being in the red area or the pink area. My one issue with it being in the red area is if the future development of the mill property, say the business just takes off. I mean, those people are good at what they do. Their business takes off. I don't want it to hinder the possibility if we put something in that, in that red area. I don't want it to hinder the development of that mill property. If the school decides they want to put a school, a new high school over there, whatever happens, but I definitely, I don't want a business like that anywhere near where the youth of Estacada are going to be walking to school or going to be hanging out. I agreed with I don't think I was part of the original ordinance yet. I don't think I was on council at that point, but I completely agreed with it. I have no problem with it being outside, down in the industrial area. But I don't think that it should be in our downtown.
Okay, Katie, you got your hand back up, and I'll get to you, Paul, next.
I do, and I just want to ask for conversation purposes, Jerry, Councilor Ten Bush, if you don't mind. I want to know what your opinion is of having the liquor store right there on, I think that's Wade and Third. Because for me, I don't see a difference between the two things. And in fact, if you've driven by any dispensary that's currently open, you would know that the flower is not looking anybody in the face. In fact, they're a lot more private and a lot more secretive than any other business. And one of the really nice things about having a business like a marijuana retail location coming into, not necessarily downtown, if you want to say let's not have it on Broadway or on Main, then let's throw that in there. But if you say no downtown at all whatsoever, what you're missing out on is actually an opportunity for increased security, because businesses like that are more secure inside and out than most businesses than we have currently downtown. So a business like that coming into our downtown area could actually benefit the businesses around it just by its increased level of security. And you're not going to see it in your face, and you're not going to be able to look in the window and see the plant like you do looking through the liquor store window. I mean, when you look through the liquor store window, you see the liquor right there. And for me, there's no difference between a minor's access to liquor and a minor's access to marijuana. They're the same thing. They're just as easy to access. And in fact, a marijuana retail location is more secure and more secretive about it than a liquor store is.
Okay, so in being a small town guy, I've lived in small towns my entire life, all across the country. When you go to a small town, the liquor stores are typically off in a corner, not right in the main thoroughfare. They're typically off in a corner, which is basically what ours is. Ours is in the backside of a building, off in a corner on a street that's used mainly by the Reliance people, and then of course down at the other end, Harmony. But that's not a high traffic area. That's not a direct walking route to the schools. So liquor stores, the liquor store is one thing. Like I said, in most small towns, they're tucked off in a corner somewhere, not out in the open. Of course, in cities like Gladstone, even there's one right on Arlington, they're right on McLaughlin Boulevard. But again, that's a bigger city. Small towns are different. And like I said, it's just my personal opinion. I don't have a problem with people doing it. I just would rather it not be in our downtown.
Thank you, Jerry. Paul, go ahead.
Going to chime in. I guess I'd be like Jerry originally when the ordinance were first put in place. I was in supportive of those, but since then I think my own thoughts have changed on it as well too. That has kind of got a big shrug for me now. If we want to allow some dispensaries to come in, or a dispensary, I'm fine with that at this point. I've spoken with quite a few people about it too, kind of getting the same response, that it's kind of a shrug. When I say we're looking at changing some things, they're like, okay, that's fine. So I haven't sensed that big of a concern. That said, that's only my group of people that I've spoken with. I think Joel's got a great idea of engaging the community, getting things in the water bill, seeing what we can do to get people together, because I'd really truly like to hear what people have to think about that, as opposed to just my thoughts or a small group of the people that I've worked around. So I'm fine with addressing this.
Okay. All right. Charity.
So I agree with Joel. I think that we should open this up to the community and get a response. That way we just kind of know. I do have my thoughts and my opinions on the matter. But I think, with something like this, I really want to see what the community has to say. And if the community is like, yeah, let's do it, then I have to honor that, right? So my personal opinion, I personally don't want to see one in Estacada. They may be secure on the inside, but they bring crime. And excuse me, I have 2020 from both Multnomah County and Clackamas County crime reports. Multnomah County is just specifically Tetra Cannabis, and then Clackamas County is throughout the area. So primarily it's theft, robbery. There was one that was armed. So the dispensaries are primarily cash. They have large amounts of cash on hand. So you've got two things going on. Yes, marijuana is now legal, but it does attract a certain element when you add on top, there's like a large amount of cash on hand. So some of these areas that weren't really seeing a high lot of call volume as far as law enforcement, that activity picked up a little bit when the dispensaries opened, primarily to seek that cash. So that's a concern of mine. So if something like that were to open up on Main Street or something like that, I would really, or in the area, downtown area, that would definitely cause some concern. I think you're going to have to see Clackamas County may need to step up their patrols. Is that going to cost the city of Estacada more money? Maybe, I don't know. So those are just some thoughts, having come from Multnomah County and having lived near dispensaries and watching, kind of seeing like what sort of happened to the neighborhoods around them, in just like a 5-year span of time was definitely noticeable. So, but like I said, if it's something that the community is like gung-ho about, I would have to honor my constituents' wishes and go with that. So those are my thoughts for right now.
Okay, thank you, Charity. And before I let you go, Joe, I want to hear from Justin real quick. Is that okay, Justin? I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, hold on one second. So actually, yeah, I like what you said there, Charity. I talked to a lot of different people. I talked to some of my neighbors who are police officers. They kind of gave the same concerns as what you're saying. So I like that you added that. I also had the same thought with Joel. I like bringing it out to the citizens and asking them. Like I said, I tried to ask as many people as I could, and I got a lot of shrugs and a lot of like, I don't really care necessarily. But they always came back to, does it have to be in the downtown? Like, I don't think they necessarily cared, but they just said, well, if we're gonna have it, why don't we just put it somewhere else? And I was actually on the council when that was originally put on there, and the concern was the children and just the image of the town. And a lot of people talked about Estacada and how it was considered a drug town and how people look at that and stuff. So our image came into it as well, I think. So I was totally for having it out in that industrial area as a great place that's not downtown, that's kind of out of sight in a sense. And I didn't see any issues with that either. But that's kind of what I heard from who I talked to.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate that. Joel, I'll let you go first, and then Katie.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of address something that Katie mentioned earlier. She kind of compared it to bars and the liquor store. So one of the things I've walked through Portland and been around through cities that have a lot of dispensaries. One thing that is definitely very noticeable is a smell of it. You can smell it sometimes from blocks away. I mean, even when they're doing stuff out there at the farm that's way off the road, you can still smell it really bad when you go by. So while she's comparing, well, you can see inside the store and stuff, but you can't smell someone who buys a bottle of alcohol and then drives off with it and goes home, or even if they drank it, you couldn't smell it. So that's also something to consider too. If it was in our downtown, that's a smell that's going to be very present there, especially on days where it's cloudy and the air is held down stronger. And those are just things that we'd have to consider as well. But and the second piece of that is I want to make sure that when we do a survey, I don't want to just focus on people within city limits, because we have a lot of people that are outside city limits that still depend on this town. So that's why I think it's important to get like a town hall or something where those people can speak to it as well. While they may not directly have voted for us, we still have a way of representing them. And I want to make sure that they have a voice in this as well. So That's it.
Thank you, Joel. Katie.
I love the idea of talking to the greater public about it. I think that the reactions are going to surprise a lot of you. So that being said, though, I hear everybody saying, not downtown, not downtown, not downtown. I really think that we need to be a little bit more specific about where we talk about when we say downtown, because I asked about, for example, the liquor store and its location in our city. And Jerry said, well, I don't have a problem with it being tucked away in a corner like it kind of is. If you see the liquor store as being kind of tucked away in a corner, it is technically downtown. So I don't mind us being somewhat restrictive if that's a compromise that we're looking at, because I'm willing to say that, hey, this conversation is probably going to end up in some sort of a compromise. That being said, I don't want to just use general broad statements like, well, I don't want it downtown, because this council has even said that certain pieces of downtown are kind of tucked away and might be okay. Especially over there where the liquor store is, there are plenty of spaces or tax lots that could be available to somebody in that corner if you wanted to tuck it off into a corner, but still allow a business who sees the potential in our downtown core to come in and bring a successful business, bring that level of security, and bring something that is honestly something that people here have asked about. A lot of people ask me why we don't have one downtown, and I don't have a better answer for them other than, well, Estacada just doesn't want it, because that's kind of what we're making it sound like right now even. But I love the idea of going to the public and having town halls and all the surveys sent out and really seeing what everybody else's reactions are, because I think everybody's reactions are going to surprise you.
I like all those statements. You're all spot on. I mean, I think letting the community speak on this, I've been down this path before with Justin down there, and we've been through this. The community stood up and said, hey, we don't want this in the downtown. I was an advocate. I was a person who fought that battle to get it in the downtown. But, when I thought about it later on and the people talking about it and all their concerns, I thought to myself, maybe this is something everybody has to talk about. That's why I'm kind of in agreement with Joel and Charity and all of them about bringing it to the people. I think this is one of those times that our community has to speak and say, hey, this is what we want. And we have to go to them and ask them, because me passing judgment of what we should and should not have on something this important, I don't think that's right. So I think that bringing it to the public and hearing their reaction and seeing how they feel about this is a wise way to go for all of us. So is that something we can do, Denise?
The survey?
Yeah.
Yep, sure.
Okay. All right. So is everybody in agreement that we should proceed with a survey, hand that out, see what we get back, and maybe even a town hall?
And the town hall.
Partnering that?
I don't say either or maybe even. I say we do both.
Okay,
Definitely.
great.
Both.
I say we do both, and I say that we have our town hall Monday, April 19th.
Okay, that's all right. Well, you've already set a date, huh? Is that an important day or what?
Why not just do it on April 20th, Katie?
Yeah.
So technically, we do our meetings on Mondays. I'm keeping with consistency. Plus, I don't know if you could get a lot of the yes vote out on that day.
Okay, all right. All right, so that's
So
what we'll
everyone's
do.
available April 19th for this?
April 19th, I think so far.
I only plan a couple weeks ahead if I can.
I won't be here that day,
Okay.
but that's okay, because usually town halls are ran by the elected officials anyway, so.
Can we, one thing that I would like to ask of staff is when we do this town hall, I would like to know or have as much information about the increase in tax revenue that we would get. I would just like to have that ready on hand for the town hall, because I'm sure that question is going to be asked. So,
And
Yeah,
probably
so-
some crime stats would be good.
yes.
Actually, I was going to say that because Molalla has a couple right there on Main. So if you get the stats, especially from Molalla, our closest sister city, I consider them, and get the crime stats, get the tax stats, that would be a great comparison.
Okay.
So,
Charity?
I have those stats right now. They're only from 2020. Both from Clackamas County and from Multnomah County. So I'll just send those over to Denise and then she can do with whatever she wants to do. So.
Great, thank you, Charity. Joel, go ahead.
When we do the town hall, can we try to, because we have a lot of people that would probably want to speak to this, some of the elderly folk and stuff that doesn't know how to use Zoom and don't get on that type of stuff. Can we do a hybrid where we have an opportunity for them to come in person if they'd like, and then have our Zoom as well? Because I think we're going to miss a chunk of the people if we don't. And I think,
So what counselors would like to be in person, just so we can know the building is covered?
No, I'll be there.
so. I mean, even if we have to like get a tent or do something outside or whatever to keep with safety or whatever, that's fine. But there's something we have where they can come in person.
So right now we don't have an ordinance that we get a tax for. We would have to also do a new ordinance too. So what are you guys thinking? So I can do some kind of a stats on what we would make. Are you thinking 3% or I guess I need to have that so I know what how I'm going to figure out what we would be getting in.
I don't even know what the rate is at this point. Does
I
anybody
would
have?
say check other towns our size and see.
Yeah, if we could maybe just bounce it off of what Malala has and,
Okay.
just as a starting point, go with them.
Okay.
And I will be out of town that day, at least I hope. I've got a permit in for a pretty remote hike that week.
Okay. That's fine because a town hall doesn't normally have all the elected officials there. So don't advertise it like a meeting.
Denise, since Malala does have that, can you pull all their ordinances and everything else on it as well, so we can have those as reference to see how they may have restricted it or what they've done with it, and also maybe Sandy's as well to kind of see what they have.
Sandy doesn't allow them.
Doesn't allow it at all. It's like they just have a flat out no, they don't have restricted on distance.
So that was a citizen vote that took place
Yeah.
right after it was legalized. Right after it was legalized, all of the cities of the state of Oregon had the opportunity to opt out of it. They just had to do a public vote on it. Sandy voted to opt out of it, so that's why they cannot have any dispensaries in their city.
Gotcha.
That's actually coming up for a revote in a couple of years, is my understanding, is that initial vote only lasted a certain period of time, and then there's going to be a sunset on it. And then in order to keep that restriction, they're going to have to revote as a city, is at least my understanding, but it's been a long time since all that happened.
Okay.
Estacada
All right.
did not opt out at that time.
Okay. So I think we're all in agreement that we're going to bring this back, and we're going to run a community outreach to see where everybody's at on this subject. And then, of course, a town hall. So and we've got the people that are going to be at the town hall as far as elected of this body right here that you've already got a list of. So I thank you for that. That was a good conversation. Now we have Acuity LLC Audit Contractors. We've all heard about this. We've all heard from them for the 1 year. Where are we at, Denise, on that?
Hey, sorry, real quick though, because we're throwing
Yeah,
that
Justin?
in the water bill. When does the water bill go out?
It won't go out till March, the end of March, the water bill, the end of March. But we
Okay,
can
so
get it on our website before that.
okay, I was just concerned with that rush of the 19th and then the water bill going out and all that kind of stuff.
Maybe
Yeah,
a
3 or 4
special
weeks.
array or
Yeah.
something.
That's 7 weeks from now.
But the water bill goes out at the end of March, right? That's all I'm saying. The
Okay.
water bill goes out
We'll
at the end
get
of the
it on our-
March.
We'll get it on our website.
Well,
Because anyone,
yeah.
most people are gonna answer the survey on the website more than the water bill one, because most people, we have people come in that hasn't even opened their water bill to pay their water bill, so they don't really look much at it, so.
Okay, sounds good.
yeah.
All right. So we're now at Acuity LLC, the audit contractors.
Yeah,
Denise?
so we're just getting everyone that wanted to approve for 1 year, so we're bringing this contract to you for approval, so we can go out for bid before this one is up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you've all had a chance to hear Acuity, and you know where they're at. You know what we've had. You know that they've been doing our taxes and when they, or audits, and they want to continue on with that. How does everybody feel about it? Are we comfortable with that?
Oh, hold on. I never did find out what the monetary difference was between the 1 year and the 3 year.
You beat me to it.
It's listed in the contract, but
Yeah, but
the 3 year was 12,500 for the city, and a 1 year would be 14,000. And then for the urban renewal agency, it was 3,000 for the 3 year, but now it's 3,500. So it'd go up $2,000 total.
Was that 12,000, is that per year or was that for all 3 years together?
No,
That's per year.
Okay, that makes much more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you know the increase. You know what's going to happen if we go with the 1 year. How does everybody feel? What do you want to do?
I think we should go for it. I mean, let's sign it. And
The
Yeah.
1 year or the 3
yeah,
year?
the 1 year, give us the 1 year, gives us a chance to kind of reevaluate, gives us a little time to look and see what we want to do.
Is that a
Okay.
motion, Joel?
Yeah, I'll go and let's see what everybody else has to say first before I put them
Oh, okay.
I'll move to approve the 1 year contract with Acuity.
Second.
Okay. You got a first and second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Done deal. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Does anybody have anything else for the good of the day? No? Okay, well, you all have a wonderful evening. I'm not going to put
Actually,
you on the spot.
One thing.
Okay, Jerry, go ahead.
So I had my first meeting with Parks and Rec. There is some pretty amazing plans coming that are going to be coming to us. So let me jump in here real quick. Just I want to put this in everybody's mind. What is it? It's Harper's Playground in Portland. If you have a chance, do a little look at Harper's Playground. You can find them on the internet. It's pretty amazing, but between that and the next park that they have planned, I think everybody's going to be really happy and excited about the parks coming, moving forward. So it was a really fun meeting. It was nothing like the TV show.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So anybody has anything else before I adjourn this meeting? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
See you guys next Monday.